Prime Minister Imran Khan, good to speak to you again. The last time I spoke to you, you were a candidate. You had big dreams, high hopes, and you told me that you were up against the mafia. So, has the mafia been defeated?
You know, this is very few times in when a status quo goes, an entrenched status quo which has been embedded in the society for 30 years, to remove them through a political transition is very difficult, because they control mostly all institutions. They have made huge amounts of money which they can use to buy almost anyone. So this was one of a genuine popular public movement which removed the status quo.
If we say that Nawaz Sharif and those around him were part of the mafia, isn't it really just a lick of paint off a whole wall of corruption? Or was that all it? Doesn't it run deeper?
No. In Pakistan politics, 1985 is what is considered a watershed. In 1985, there were non-party-based elections by a military dictator. He did this to depoliticize the society. But actually, what happens when you don't have political parties contesting elections? You have individuals winning elections, they come into power, there is no ideology to bind them together. So how do you bind them together? You pay them. So that's where corruption started. There was always a bit of corruption in the society. But then it just went to levels where eventually it brought the country down. Because Pakistan was one of the fastest growing countries in Asia, especially in South Asia. And if you look from 1985 onwards, we just have been overtaken by India, Bangladesh, even Sri Lanka in some ways has moved ahead of Pakistan. So what stops a country achieving its potential? Corruption. Because corruption not only siphons off money which should be spent on human beings, it also destroys institutions. I cannot make money until and unless I destroy the state institutions that are going to check my corruption.
Fighting corruption, fantastic idea. There are those who look at it, you've been in power for a short period of time, and those who preceded you, Nawaz Sharif, the Sharif brothers, in jail, looks like Mr. Zardari could be in jail soon. There's an interpretation that this is justice and politics of the victor. All the old guys, just like they were coming after you, now you're going after them and the courts are going after them.
All the corruption cases against Nawaz Sharif and against Asif Zardari, all of them started before my party came into power. The case in which Asif Zardari is stuck, it's about fake bank accounts where money was siphoned off from government funds into fake bank accounts and then money laundered out of the country. Now that investigation started in 2016, 2 years before we came into power. The cases against Sharif, the two Sharif brothers, all of them were before us. So none of the cases were initiated by us. And in fact, we haven't initiated any case at all as yet. All that has happened is that the state institutions are no longer controlled by the mafia. So they are independent to work. That's all that's happened. They are free now to go after anyone, no matter how strong, land grabbers, mafias, criminal politicians. The state institutions now are free to go after them. And that's what's happened.
Because there are a lot of people who say Pakistan's courts have been notoriously slow and suddenly they're working efficiently when it comes to putting the former leaders in jail.
Why were they slow? Because they were slow because the governments did not allow courts to function. The state institutions that were supposed to prosecute the criminals, the big politicians, those state institutions were controlled by the same politicians. So nothing was happening. So in our entire history, the powerful always got away. It was only the poor people, the weak people that got stuck in jails. So this is the first time, and that's the major change that has taken place in Pakistan. Those people who came into power, made billions, are now suddenly, they are on, the rule of law has got to them. The state institutions are now taking action against them.
You came to Ankara. Tell me why Turkey is a natural ally and why you think there's a natural friendship and relationship here.
Well, firstly, there's a history behind this. People of the Muslims of the Indian subcontinent always had this close tie with the Turks, and that started with the War of Independence, when Kemal Atatürk was fighting against foreign occupation, and when Turkey was fighting for its independence. So the Muslims of India, especially what is now Pakistan, they all supported financially, collected money, funds, sent them over to help their Turkish brothers. And since then, this bond has stayed. People in Turkey realized that what the Muslims of India did at that time. And the Muslims of India took a lot of pride in the way the Turks fought for their independence, because all the rest of the Muslim world was colonized. So Turkey remained the only independent Muslim nation. So that was the genesis of this mutual feeling of brotherhood. But also there are trading links between Turkey and Pakistan, and we want to enhance them. In fact, we have decided today that we are going to have a working group which will draw up for the next 5 years to 10 years how we are going to increase our trading, investing, and the two countries investing in each other, how we're going to help each other enhance our trade in these next 5 to 10 years.
So business ties, economic ties, political ties, also a request from Turkey for Pakistan to take the Fethullah Gulen group more seriously and what they do in Pakistan. Did it take a while for Pakistan to be convinced of what was going on?
Well, firstly, when the coup took place in Turkey, people of Pakistan stood with President Erdogan. And secondly, when the proceedings started in the courts, the courts took their time. And finally, the Supreme Court gave this verdict and declared them as a terrorist organization. And now those schools are going to be handed over to, I think, a Turkish charity it is. So they're taken away from them.
There's a realigning, it seems, going on. And there was a fascinating relationship with the United States over the years. You were a major critic of that relationship between Pakistan and the US. You felt Pakistan gave too much and the US gave too little, or the US gave you guys too much trouble, and you bled for them, for their wars, right? Donald Trump was animated on Twitter. You replied to him on Twitter. Tell me what's going on, because he says he's looking forward to possibly meeting up with you. So is it all water under the bridge?
Actually, Pakistan is to be blamed for the lopsided relationship with the US. Because, if a country wants to be used, others will use it. Pakistan, unfortunately, rather than fixing its economy and standing on its own feet, it, over the years, developed this dependency syndrome on aid, foreign aid and easy loans. But whenever you rely on other people for aid and loans, there's no free lunch. So you have to pay a price. And Pakistan paid a heavy price. In the 80s, we became a frontline state in the Afghan jihad. After we got a bit of money, but then we were left with 4 million refugees in Pakistan, drugs and Kalashnikov culture, sectarian groups, militant groups were left behind. And then 9/11 comes and Pakistan again joins the US in its war on terror, when Pakistan had nothing to do with 9/11. So Pakistan then took money from the US and went after the same groups which had been nurtured to conduct the Afghan jihad in the 80s. So we witnessed chaos, terrorism of proportions that could have brought down a country. 80,000 Pakistanis died. We still are recovering from that awful decade where there were suicide attacks daily and every institution was threatened. So Pakistan paid a huge price. And all I'm saying is that from now onwards, Pakistan is not going to fight anyone's war. It's not going to be treated like a hired gun, paid to do someone else's job. Our foreign policy will be what is good for people of Pakistan. And we think that rather than what was the previous mantra of doing more, we were always expected to do more. Now Pakistan is going to be an ally in peace. We're going to do our best to help Afghanistan have a peaceful transition, have a political settlement. That's what Pakistan should do. But we're never going to participate in someone else's war again.
The Afghans and the Americans still say the way you can help is by stopping support for the Taliban and Haqqani network in Afghanistan. That's how you can contribute to peace.
Anyone who says that is just fooling the people. They're not fooling themselves, but they're fooling the public opinion. How can 3,000 or 4,000 Haqqani group be the reason why 150,000 NATO troops plus 200,000 Afghan troops could not win in Afghanistan in 16 years? How could it be possible? I mean, if there were large number of people going from Pakistan into Afghanistan to do fighting, there's so much surveillance. There are drones. You can spot them. You can actually spot one person crossing the border. So Pakistan was scapegoated. We were made scapegoats for a very, one of the most ill thought out policy in Afghanistan. I mean, it was a one-dimensional military approach to solving the Afghan issue. And everyone knew they were failing, and they compounded failure by sending in more troops, surge, everything failed. So the only thing Pakistan should do now is what I've advocated for a long time. There is no military solution in Afghanistan. Fortunately, everyone recognizes that now. And what Pakistan can do is do its bit, along with the neighbors of Afghanistan, to get the Taliban to sit with the Americans and Afghan government and have a political settlement.
When we were in Islamabad just over a year ago, Tehreek Labbaik Pakistan shut down the capital. We interviewed them on the streets. They were very confident. They had a feeling that when they were angry, the government had to listen. After Asia Bibi was ordered released by the Supreme Court, they flared up again. You didn't blink. And now their leadership's in jail on terrorism charges and so on. What's that going to tell us about your leadership and your premiership moving forward when it comes to those groups?
There is no way the state can be held hostage to people who refuse to follow the orders of the Supreme Court. The case of Asia Bibi is a tragic one. It's where she was in jail and then the Supreme Court of Pakistan found that she was innocent. Now, this one particular group refused to accept the Supreme Court's decision. Now, if in a society the Supreme Court's decision is not accepted, it's basically the end of a civilized society. Then there's no rule of law. So we tried our best, we talked to them and did everything. Eventually, the state had to take action.
It seems as if there was a small compromise to be made at around about the same time, which was your nomination for a financial advisor or finance ministry advisor who happened to be an Ahmadi, and because you didn't want the trouble, it was rescinded because you don't want to open up that Pandora's box. Is that the way politics has to be played in Pakistan?
Look, at the moment, Pakistan faces multi-crises. Fortunately, Pakistan is getting out of all the crises. the biggest crisis we faced was a current account deficit. We were left with a record deficit. Our foreign exchange reserves were low. We were barely able to pay 3 months of our imports. We were going to default on our foreign borrowing. So that was the immediate crisis. But there were other crises. There was institutional breakdown and so on. So when you wake up in the morning, you have to pick which of these challenges am I going to take on first. You have to prioritize your challenges. And there's no government in the world which faces multi-crises and then takes on all of them at the same time. There will be time to take on other crises which we are facing. But at the moment, the main crisis was our economic one. And I'm very pleased to say that in these 4 months, we have stabilized. And now we are moving on to increase our exports, to increase our foreign remittances, and then, above all, to increase investment in Pakistan. And that is critical for job creation and our, boosting up our foreign exchange reserves. So the most important thing was the economy. But there are other areas which need attending to, and which we are doing, but which will gradually take time. So the short answer is, you don't pick all your fights at the same time.
Understood. I have 2 more questions for you. And I know you're tight for time. So related to needing investment, boosting the economy, addressing, reviving the economy, getting people to work, CPEC, China's Belt and Road Initiative. You might not like this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I saw in your communique with President Erdogan, you spoke about support for the Palestinian people, for example, reaffirming support for the Palestinian people. You're doing business with China. Does that mean you can't criticize them when it comes to what they're doing to the Uyghurs and putting possibly 1 million Uyghur Muslims in re-education camps that look like concentration camps?
I do not know the exact situation of this. Frankly, I just have to tell you the truth. In Pakistan at the moment, since we've been in power 4 months, I've taken 5 days off. I'm serious, 5 days in 4 months. It's because of the intensity of the issues which we immediately faced. New government comes in, first time in power. There were so many different issues to settle. So, to be honest, I actually don't know much about the situation. But I can tell you one thing: the Chinese have been, what can I say? In this doom and gloom which we inherited, the Chinese have been a breath of fresh air for us. They have been helpful to us in areas which I can't tell, because some of the areas they want us to keep confidential. The Chinese government, every culture has its own way of working, but they work in a very confidential way. They do not like to bring things out in the public. So I can't talk about all the ways they've helped us, but they have been extremely helpful to us. And I must say, the future, we have these plans of reviving our economy. China is going to play they're going to play a huge part, because we have these special economic zones, we have cooperations in agriculture, investment in Garda. So,
if it's going on, would you criticize it? If it can be proved to you that it's going on?
If it is, I would deal with it in a different way with the Chinese. I would approach them and speak to them confidentially. I would never talk about it in public, because that's how they are.
Final question. Kartarpur corridor has been opened up. Sikh pilgrims crossing that contentious border. 70 years of history for families and so on. It's seen as an olive branch from your end. Modi's government's not so keen on your intentions for it, even though some in India are seeing it as a thaw. What's your message to Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India?
Well, it is, apart from this Kartarpur, I have already asked the Indian government, specifically Prime Minister, that look, you come 1 step towards us, we'll come 2 steps towards you. 2 nuclear-armed countries cannot think of war. They should not even think of Cold War. because Cold War can turn hot at any stage, and you do not take a chance when two countries have nuclear bombs. So the only other option is to solve your issues through dialogue. Unfortunately, we have been rebuffed so far by India. And I feel the reason is the Indian elections in April. And since the elections are coming in, I feel that this anti-Pakistan rhetoric gets votes to BJP, which is Narendra Modi's party. And I have to say that I'm disappointed. But again, I reiterate, two nuclear-armed countries should never think of sorting out their differences through war. It's suicide. And we will keep trying. The problem at the moment is also Kashmir. Apart from the Indian elections, it's Kashmir. Now in Kashmir, the Indian brutality in the last year has just been mind-boggling. They have been killing, shooting at boys, blinding them with pellet guns. They have killed, I don't know, about 500 people in a year. And all they're doing is they're alienating the people of the Kashmir Valley. And and also this hatred against the Indian, because when they kill people, there's a reaction. So what India is doing is it's palming off this reaction on Pakistan. Whereas now everyone recognizes, even the United Nations, they recognize that now it is an indigenous struggle. And the solution does not lie in brutality of your security forces. Solution lies in dialogue, and there is a solution there. But it is not with violence.
Prime Minister Imran Khan, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.